I can honestly say that FatalError is one of the best sans I've seen in recent memory, with honestly some of the more complex story I've seen in ages, with it even being compared to something it's directly based from, being Aftertale. The first comic episode posted on Tumblr was on May 4th of 2016, basically certifying its place as one of the original sans during Undertale's peak in popularity. While the character, I would say, didn't end up as popular as even Aftertale or Ink and Error, he still had some major popularity thanks to the channel who dubbed it being Sans Comedy TV during 2020. Literally one of the most popular known dubbing channels in the last 5 or so years, by the way, with each video hitting around 500 to 1 million views in each part, and it's honestly well deserved. This is honestly one of the more unique ways of handling a character like Gino to places I've never seen. Outside of course, classic, Gino is used as a template for a lot of stories. A lot of people forget, but Error Sans is literally a version of Gino. They're even made by the same person, and this guy is obviously no exception, and that's what I'm going to go over today. And before we get there, I just want to remind you to please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. It really helps the channel a lot. And now, FatalError's story is probably one of the most disturbing, but also the most engaging I've ever seen. It begins with the aftermath of a fight between Error Sans and Gino Sans, which is kind of funny because these two are literally made by the same person. And as you could probably tell, Error won, as Gino was literally strung up. They have a bit of a dialogue where it's basically Gino just taking the piss of Error, and Error kind of just being a man-child as usual. And before Gino was taken out, everything freaking glitches out, and everything is like a distorted mess before we see who Gino ends up as. That being now FatalError, with one of the most scarier designs I've seen from a sans without going for the more obvious tropes of making them scary. He has a glitchy effect like Error, but with a twist, with his eyes being this blue and red. I wouldn't say pupils. It's not pupils. it's just like their eyes are just blue and red, especially like, you know, the glitchy eye that Gino usually hides. Yeah, that's just looks melted down to their mouth. I'm pretty sure it's the blue side, I believe. I might be wrong on that. And it's just glitching around their body. And honestly, in some modern drawings of Fatal, it's just TV static. So it shows much more of them literally being of a fatal error than just, you know, an error. And he even has like some blood that comes from his mouth that comes from the scar he got from the Gino Sans story from Aftertale. It really shows how much his character is kind of now just a shrouded mess of pain and despair. And through this, we are shown, you know, what Fatal's goals are throughout the story moving forward. And there's two of them. Make a new papyrus and kill Error. Pretty simple, right? No, not really. See, in the comic, there's a constant theme of Fatal and his papyrus always being there. I might have said that wrong, but you could say he gets antsy, for lack of a better word, when he sees literally any papyrus or anyone that even acts kind of similar to him. His love for his brother runs deep, and it shows in what he feels is right to do, even if it's pretty messed up, all things considered. His efforts of making a new pap seem like it ended up in a cycle like this. He goes in an AU, any AU he deems fit, finds a skeleton, Control-C's their entire code, goes back to his home, Control-V's them, basically copying and pasting, essentially, I'll get to that later, essentially murders them, essentially for their code to make a new pap. And it seemingly doesn't work, and, you know, rinse and repeat. And surprisingly enough, around the end of the story in chapter 5, at least the last part or so, we even see this new papyrus-ish kind of, it's not that well explained, admittedly enough, of who this papyrus is or how he ended up like this, but it seemed like he did make strides into making a papyrus, but maybe it wasn't the papyrus he was looking for. Shoot, who knows? Again, it's like this story really shows even through this and how he interacts with other characters, even the papyrus he made, that he's a very, very unstable character. One minute he's making simple puns and jokes like you would expect from someone of his sans to do, and next minute he's yelling and lashing out at you. His name's pretty accurate, all things being considered. And this reminds me of another goal that he had. Error. Remember that? Yeah, that's basically probably one of his main priorities, to go and find and kill Error. And I mean, it's not unwarranted revenge, you know? I mean, he did end up like that because of him. Even around the beginning of the story, when he meets Blue, he gets like, it's implied that he had this big panic attack when he saw blue strings, because Error's blue strings. It reminds it of Error, you know? And in the story, we actually get to see Fatal and Error meet up, and it ends up in a fight. And the fight itself is honestly really cool, with it basically showing off how menacing and terrifying and powerful Fatal can be. By the end of the fight, completely ripping Error's arm off, which was very surprising, because believe it or not, at this point, when it came to stories, Error was almost always the one on top. The only person who ever contended with him was Ink. Everyone else was not generally around Error's power, you could say. He was that powerful. He was essentially a god. That's why he's known as the destroyer of AUs, believe it or not. And it's one of the few times where you actually see Error was in a very bad spot. Right now, Error was the one being hunted and not the one hunting. Yeah. And you could say it was definitely satisfying. Right. There's another character I almost forgot to mention that's really important to Fatal's story and his quest. That being this kind of weird-looking Gaster flower. He eggs on and kind of just talks the most to Fatal, trying to, I guess, push him to achieve what he wants in ways that Fatal surprisingly won't do. Which is also another thing that shows Fatal's kind of moral gray area in a sense when it comes to his character. But I mean, Flower Gaster doesn't give a damn. He kind of seems like he's just the biggest instigator, claiming the most wild stuff just to piss him off. You can tell just from how Fatal acts that his words, and at least some to a small extent, have a major effect on what he does. Especially with the whole Control-C, Control-V method he's been doing. Like, this is a darn Roblox tycoon game. To those who see, it's like a myth. And you even see from other characters' perspective, where you literally see where like the copied character can literally see themselves. You can see two of the same character. Imagine that. Like, one minute you wake up and you just see another you hanging out with your friends, and in 1 minute you're being pulled away. That's horrifying. And the comic really shows and really does a good job of painting that picture. Unfortunately, the story of FatalError hasn't seemingly been completed, with the last part of Chapter 5 being released on October 18th of 2020, with not really much news on it aside of text saying it would continue on January of 2022. And clearly, it has not. I do seriously hope this series continues in some shape or form, because it's honestly really intriguing, and I want to see like how much more of the story can be pushed on. But for now, let's get to the part that everyone usually cares about. As for how strong this guy is, yeah, he's really freaking strong. Just to go along with basic abilities, he can shoot Gaster blasters, use bones, use red strings similar to Error with his blue strings. He can literally see every single piece of code around him. And yes, I do mean literally everything. He can create portals to travel through different universes on a whim. And as explained before, he can copy and paste characters' code copy and paste them. From his story, he's quite literally or seemingly much stronger than Error by a pretty good margin, and potentially Ink as well. If Fatal did not short circuit before dealing the final blow to Error, he could have definitely defeated him right then and there and killed him. It's 100% likely. So basically, if you know the feats of error sands, imagine that, take it in a pan, flame it up times 2, and that's how strong FatalError is. If anyone has any more to his kit that makes him stronger, please let me know in the comments. I would really like to know. And well, yeah, that's FatalError. And yeah, that's FatalError, everyone. The man is a depressed skeleton with a severe case of glitching obsessiveness on the side. Yeah, that'll be $30. Here's his place on the tier list. And remember, kids, never trust a flower with hands.